Oh, hello. Today we're doing something a little bit different than I normally do, which is that we are going to be doing a vlog of me watching some cozy mysteries. Now, if you guys have been keeping up with me recently, you know that I've been in a little bit of a slump reading-wise, and one of the things I like to do when I'm in a slump, besides some other strategies I've talked about, is I do enjoy watching sort of literary adjacent adaptations of TV shows. I do find that that can help sort of de-slump. So, with that being said, before we dive into the video today, we need to thank our sponsor who actually inspired what we are going to be watching today, and that is Acorn TV. So look, friends, if you are like me, you have had the content well run dry during lockdown and quarantine, and I have been looking for new ways to get entertainment for when I'm not reading. Acorn TV has been a great option for me. Acorn TV has world-class television programming from Britain and beyond, and I particularly appreciate being able to access different shows from Britain and the Commonwealth that are harder to find here in the US, like the Sarah Phelps Agatha Christie adaptations of And Then There Were None and The Witness for the Prosecution, as well as my beloved Miss Fisher's murder mysteries. They also have 10 to 12 Acorn TV originals every year and over 40 exclusive premieres. And I feel like Acorn TV really is squarely aimed at a lot of my interests because they have tons of classic literature adaptations as well as a lot of different Agatha Christie adaptations, which you all know is my literal actual jam. But of particular interest for today's video, they have an entire subclassification of cozy mysteries. So if you're like me and you like your TV cozy, or you're looking for some great adaptations, other crime procedurals, just really anything you could want that comes out of Britain and the Commonwealth, then I think Acorn TV can be an absolutely fantastic option. So today I'm going to be focusing on some of their cozy mystery content, including those Sarah Phelps Agatha Christie adaptations, but they really do have something for everyone, so definitely stay tuned to the end of the video to find out more about how you can access Acorn TV for free for a limited time. So thank you again to Acorn TV for sponsoring today's video, and let's talk about what I'm going to be watching. So like I said, I'm going to watch two Sarah Phelps Agatha Christie adaptations. One I have seen previously, which is the And Then There Were None adaptation, but the other I have not yet seen, which is the Witness for the Prosecution adaptation. So for both of those, I'm going to get into kind of what I like, what I don't like about the adaptations. With respect to the original source material, I'll put some timestamps for when I get into some spoilers. And then I'm also watching Agatha Raisin from MC Beaton, adapted from MC Beaton's series, and Midsomer Murders, which I have been meaning to try. So without further ado, let's dive into some vlog. Hey friends, so I am flaring today with my autoimmune disease. So I've gotten in bed early. It's like 8 o'clock. I am going to get started. So I'm going to be watching The Witness for the Prosecution, which is an adaptation of Agatha Christie's. Well, here's the thing. So Witness for the Prosecution started its life as a short story, and that short story has one ending. Then Agatha Christie adapted it for the stage, and she insisted on giving it this different ending, which I feel like is the ending most people know. More people have, I feel like, experienced the play because it's been a very popular play versus necessarily reading the short story. I feel like I saw an adaptation, like an old adaptation a while ago, and it had, I think, the play's ending. Here's the thing. I personally strongly prefer the ending of the short story over the ending of the play. So I will be interested to see which one they go with in this adaptation. I'm gonna do like a spoiler-free section after I finish watching, and then also a spoiler-filled section, so stay tuned for that. But going into this is one of the Sarah Phelps BBC adaptations of Agatha Christie. I think it was the second one she did. The first one was, I believe, And Then There Were None, which we will watch later. I've already seen that one. Preview of coming attractions. I love that one, so I'm expecting that's going to be a really fun rewatch. But anyway, so Sarah Phelps has been doing these very high budget, very well done, actors you recognize kind of adaptations of Agatha Christie's work for the last like 5 to 7 years or so. And I always appreciate her adaptations. I don't always agree with the choices that get made, but she definitely brings a point of view to Christie, and that point of view is taking some of the dark subtext that is present in Agatha Christie's work, but is usually subtext rather than text, and she makes it text. So she, like, the atmosphere is always very dark and mysterious and kind of creepy and scary. So, like, it's always very, like, dour or cynical. Like, it has a very hard-boiled kind of take on things. They're always beautifully shot, beautifully acted, and again, like I said, I don't always necessarily agree with the choices she makes in terms of, like, what subtext she brings out, but I appreciate that it's highlighting that Christie, I think, can be read purely surface level, just fun enjoyment. I mean, I love Christie, and that's often how I read her, but there is a lot of, like, underlying stuff kind of simmering under the surface of her work that, like, when you really process it, is very dark. Like, if you guys watched my Mission Marple when I was rereading Marple, my takeaway was, oh, so, like, basically this entire series could be seen as an expression of sequestered British female rage. Like, there's definitely a reading for that in Christie. So anyway, I'm gonna be really interested to see which ending they go with in this one, if they go with the short story or the play, and B, what her sort of, like, take on the material is going to be, because she always has a perspective. I have got my fingers crossed that they'll use the short story ending, but I'm guessing they're going to use the play ending because that's the more popular one. I have read the short story, I have seen that older movie, and I saw an adaptation of it on the stage one of the times I was in England. So I'm pretty familiar with this source material, and I'm excited to see what the perspective on this one is. Good morning. It's the next day, and I finished The Witness for the Prosecution last night, and I really enjoyed it. It was, I think, probably my second favorite of the Sarah Phelps adaptations that I have seen, because I felt like the subject, like the source material, lent itself very nicely to her kind of dark, hard-boiled take on Christie. So I thought that was a good match of sort of, like, the creative vision with the source material. I mean, as always, like, beautiful costumes, beautifully shot. Like, these are always very high quality adaptations. I feel like British character actors, they're just, like, a cut above. I don't know. Like, I feel like every time I see some of these adaptations, and I'm like, oh yeah, that guy, and, like, the guy who played the lawyer, who played Leonard Wold's lawyer, I've seen him probably, like, 100 times in different productions from the UK, and he's always great, and I just feel like they're spoiled with that. But anyway, so great acting. Kim Cattrall plays the victim, Emily French, and they took her in sort of like an old, basically like Samantha from Sex and the City, but British, with a questionable British accent, but okay. So she's sort of like past her prime, but she's like seducing Leonard. So basically, I felt like they took a lot of the subtext of that relationship between Emily French and Leonard and made it text, which I had mixed feelings about. I think ultimately it worked for the story that they were telling. But anyway, so Kim Cattrall was good. The costumes were beautiful. It was all beautiful. This is all, by the way, my non-spoilery section. I thought in terms of, like, the thematic route they went made sense for the source material. So basically they are making more explicit the fact that Leonard was a veteran of World War I, and also the fact that Romaine came from the continent in a context that would have been her growing up and, like, coming into adulthood during World War I and all the horrible things that happened to everybody in that war. So I thought that made sense in terms of, like, the time period this was written in, and I thought it added a lot to the original story in terms of, like, why different people act the way that they do. This idea of, like, war making all of us monsters, kind of. And also I felt like there was a real theme of sort of, like, the old preying on the young, especially through World War I, this idea of, like, all of these older diplomats then, like, signing up all of these young people to their death, and then also in some of the dynamics of the story. So overall, I thought this was really good. Now we'll get into a spoiler section. So if you don't want to know anything that you wouldn't find out just from, like, the description, leave me here. Okay, so I was very happy that they actually went with the short stories ending, which makes sense for Sarah Phelps, because the short stories ending, which is that Romaine knows Leonard is guilty and is purposely trying to help him get off so that they can live a life together afterwards, I think is more powerful than the ending Christie went with in the play. I think Christie over the year, from what I've surmised, Christie over the years became uncomfortable with the idea that this was a short story that like the murderers, the bad people just like totally get away with it. And so she wanted to fix that. But I think that it's a darker and more satisfying ending in the short story, which I think is called Traitor's Hands. That sounds right. I like that ending better. So I was excited that they went with that. I do wish that they hadn't, like in the short story, the way it ends is such a like mic drop of like, she says something to the effect of like, I didn't help him because I thought he was innocent. I helped him because I knew he was guilty. And like, that's the end of the short story. It's like such a mic drop. There's like this whole expository thing with Romaine and Leonard and then like confronting his lawyer, Mayhew. And I just felt like it put things too much on the nose. I wish that they had trusted the audience more to just like get the direction that they were going in, because like everything they'd done, you know, it's a 2-hour movie and, you know, this probably happens at like an hour and 45 minutes. The entire previous 105 minutes had supported what they were then literally saying. So I wish that they'd kind of trusted the audience with that a little bit more. That said, the way that that was staged, I thought was really effective. And sort of the last parting shot we have of Leonard and Romaine, I thought was really haunting. Like just the way that that looked, I thought was really beautiful. And yeah, so anyway, they also have Mayhew have this whole thing with like his son dying in the war, and they went there together and he came back, but his son didn't, and his wife like hates him for that. And then like the very end is basically his lawyer after he finds out that Leonard is actually a complete monster and he helped him, you know, get off. And also his wife basically comes out and says like, I will never forgive you for persuading our son to go to this war and then you coming back and him not. He literally walks into the sea to kill himself. So I thought that I got where it was going. The thing that I continue to wish people would just do is the ending of that short story, because it is so powerful. And I think like, yeah, I don't know. I get that I think maybe it's a very short ending, so maybe that's why people don't do it. I don't know. I just still love the true original ending of that short story, but overall I was very pleased that that was the overall direction they went, because I think it's a better ending than the one that Christie came up with for the play adaptation. I think her short story ending is a better one, even if it's because there's not a big triumph of good over evil. It's like, no, sometimes people are just like manipulative monsters, and like there's something truly horrifying because Leonard throughout the short story and the play, he presents as so charming, and then like when you really confront what he did and the fact that his wife is like complicit in that and cool with it, it just like really drives home the fact that you can't trust the way that people present. Sometimes, you know what I mean? Like that monsters are hiding amongst us and we can't always know who they are. So anyway, all that to say, I'm glad they went the short story route. I wish they truly just like kept it like impactful, but I think this is definitely my favorite adaptation, including like I like this better than I like the play version that I've seen. And the play version was really good. I just don't like that ending as much. So this is like my favorite adaptation of that short story for sure. And in this one, they also really make Romaine the main character, or like kind of the driving place where the audience is invested in, along with Leonard's lawyer. So I thought that that was really well handled. The actress who played Romaine, I thought was a real standout, and she has this really dramatic scene where you really get to see how mistreated she has been because she's a woman, and especially because she's a woman who is foreign. I thought that that was very relevant and very powerful. Like I thought that that's also subtext in the story. Not even subtext, it is a theme in the story, the short story, the original source material, and I thought that they brought that to the screen really powerfully. So yeah, overall, big thumbs up for me on this one. It's a Sarah Phelps adaptation I haven't seen. I think I've seen all the rest of them now. I don't remember, but we will come back and watch another Sarah Phelps adaptation at the end of this, because I'm gonna rewatch And Then There Were None, which is definitely my favorite of her outings with Christie. So, first one down, big success. Okay, wow, hair is looking a little wild today. I was about to put on an episode of Murder, She Wrote, and I thought instead of that, I will try some Agatha Raisin. So what I have heard about Agatha Raisin is that she is if I'm remembering rightly, this TV show is based on a book series from MC Beaton, I believe. And I have heard that she is very similar to like Miss Marple, Murder, She Wrote, like it's a cozy small town mystery kind of thing. So I feel like I could be in the mood for that this evening. Instead of my normal Murder, She Wrote rewatch for the 3,000th time, whatever, don't judge me. So we're gonna try the first episode, which is, I think, has something to do with like a quiche competition. I don't know, we'll find out together. Okay, so I watched the first episode of Agatha Raisin, and I actually thought that this was really, really fun. It had a much more like comedic tone than I was expecting. So Agatha, the titular Agatha Raisin, by the way, has fabulous hair. Like the bangs are just beyond. She is like a big PR person in London, and she's always dreamed of retiring early to the Cotswolds. So she's like, you know, money bags, and she's saved up her money and she's gonna retire to the Cotswolds, and she's gonna like try to live this idyllic country life. She's not very good at it though, in terms of she brings a lot of her sort of like big city tude to this little village. She immediately meets this really hunky little detective dude who immediately gets sort of like a cougar crush on her, but she has this, you know, this beautiful home, and she's trying to fit in with her neighbors. She's not doing a great job of it. So she decides she's gonna enter the quiche competition at the village fete. So she buys a spinach quiche from a bakery because she doesn't know how to bake, and she still doesn't win, and she's really angry and makes like a scene about it basically. And the dude who's like judging the competition, he takes the rest of her quiche home. He's eating the quiche and ends up poisoned via the quiche. So now we got to figure out like who done it. So this was just like super fun. It was very rompy in its tone. This actually reminded me a lot of Gilmore Girls. So if you were looking for something that's like Murder, She Wrote meets Gilmore Girls in the Cotswolds, this is the show. I think Simon Savage really loved MC Beaton's original book series about this, and I don't actually know that I would want to read the books. I actually quite enjoyed the show because I enjoyed the coziness of the overall like community. They're all in church one Sunday when, you know, the guy is found dead, and they're all like gossiping with each other, and then they run out. Like it's this super cute, very like, it's got a certain vibe to it that I was really into. So I would definitely keep watching this. This is very like just a nice like warm blanket kind of a show. Very cozy. If you like the small town feels, I think this has that. Plus then you also have the mystery. She also gets an adorable kitten, which is fun. There's like love interest. She's developing some friendships. So like, I think that this first episode actually has a lot of interesting setup of where this series could go within this little small town. I guessed who done it, but I felt like it was a fun journey to, you know, kind of get there. Yeah, overall, this was super fun. So I would watch this one again for sure. And yeah. Alrighty, so we are gonna be watching Midsomer Murders while I put together this bookcase. I'm really excited about this. So recently my mom actually started watching Midsomer Murders, and she's been on me to give it a try because she keeps saying like, this is just so you. It reminds her of like Miss Marple and like cozy mystery vibes. Also, I'm a lover of OG Law and Order, and so there's a little bit of that in the mix. So I am excited to dive into this one. I am hoping it's gonna be some kind of like, I've got it on over here. I'm hoping it's gonna be some sort of like country house mystery, because I believe it's called The Killing at Badger's Drift. So I'm pretty pumped for this. I've gotten a personal recommendation for it, and I'm hoping it's gonna give me country house cozy mystery vibes. So I'm gonna be putting this together and watching the show to keep me company. Okay guys, I finished building my bookcase, and I finished the first episode of Midsomer Murders, and I have got to tell you, I am absolutely hooked. This is far and away like the success of this project. I guess totally, because my next one is a rewatch. I love Midsomer Murder. Okay, so first of all, I loved that when it first started, I was like, I'm not clear what year this is in. I can't tell if this is meant to be in like 1940 or 1985. Like, I have no idea. It wasn't until somebody mentioned credit card slips that I was like, oh, okay, this is meant to be contemporary. Everybody dresses like they are out of time. I guess like 90s style. I looked it up. This came out in like 97. Okay, so our setup for this episode is adorable old lady. She and her adorable old lady friend are in a competition to find this specific orchid in the woods around Badger's Drift, which is the little village. And when they find it, they put like a little stake in front of it and take a picture. It's adorable. This is something I would like to do with my friends now. And when she is doing this, she hears something. And at first I thought it was somebody being killed, but quickly realized it was not that. It was Le Petite Mort. So she hears, you know, throws of passion, and she's disturbed and runs away. And she goes home. She doesn't even lock up her bike. And she calls like the local crisis hotline, and then she starts to call someone in Brighton, but before she can finish, somebody murders her. Enter Detective Chief Inspector Barnaby, and I think he's a sergeant, Troy. They're gonna investigate, and I love them. Okay, I love both of them. Barnaby has like a daughter in university. She's gonna be in a play, so we get a little bit of his home life. I love their interactions together. And this is just such a good mystery because it comes out that like maybe this is connected to a murder that was ruled an accident years before, and like we've got all the different people involved. We've got like every British character actor you recognize. There's like Donovan from Indiana Jones, baby Emily Mortimer. We've got a guy that I was like, he is so familiar, who is this? And I looked it up, Colin Firth's little brother with like such derpy derp 90s hair. And it's a really satisfying small town cozy whodunit. I'm obsessed. I'm gonna keep watching this. I'm totally hooked. So this does remind me in some ways of like kind of a Miss Marple type story because it is a small town and everybody's up in each other's business. I'd say it's more serious than Agatha Raisin was, but it's not like as serious as the Sarah Phelps Christie adaptations. This has sort of like a level of campiness to it. Everybody feels like they're a little bit bitchy, which I was really into. Now, one thing I will give you a slight content warning on is that there is a character who is gay in this, and textually there is a constable. Constable Troy is treating him like garbage because he's gay, and Barnaby is kind of chiding him for it and being like, don't be a jerk to him just because he's gay. So just know that that's there. I think that's an element from the 90s that maybe just didn't age that well. So just a warning there. But he's not like, they're all so bitchy. They all have such posh accents for like no reason. And they're all in the country, and there's like murderousness and blackmailing. And it was so satisfying. I cannot wait to keep watching this. This is like my new obsession. It feels very much to me like Murder, She Wrote. It's that same level of like, it is a serious crime, but there's always this sort of campy element to it. Yeah. So anyway, this is definitely my big hit thus far. I've already seen And Then There Were None, which is what we're gonna watch next, which I know I love, but in terms of new things, this was definitely my favorite. Hey there. So today is another flare day. So I'm going to be taking it easy in bed, and to aid me in that pursuit, I thought that I would put on the last of the things I was going to watch, which is And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, and this is the Sarah Phelps adaptation for the BBC. So this was the first Sarah Phelps adaptation I watched, and so far from what I've seen, if I'm remembering rightly, I think it's the best of them. I think Sarah Phelps's sort of dark kind of perspective on Christie's source material lends itself really well to And Then There Were None, because And Then There Were None is it's basically like kind of an existential thriller horror novel, and I just think that her kind of, I think I was calling it hard-boiled, yeah, like her kind of hard-boiled vibe that she brings to her adaptations, I think just works with the source material very well because it's pretty present in that novel already. I remember loving the set design of this one. It's beautifully I just remember really liking the actual house. Acting was really good. Yeah, I just remember really loving this. I watched this when it came out with my parents, so it's been a few years because my dad was still alive then. So we watched this as a family and all of us really enjoyed it. Now, if you watch this channel, you know that And Then There Were None is like, I think I put that as my number 4 all-time favorite book. And also it's sort of like the granddaddy of my very favorite trope in any book, which is an isolated close circle mystery where everybody brought to one place, and then people start dying, you got to figure out who done it. This is like the grand dam of all of those. So I love this source material. I remember really liking this adaptation. So I expect that this is going to be just a lovely, cozy day. filled with things that I enjoy. So I'll check back in with you guys later and we'll do a similar, kind of like what I think I did with The Witness for the Prosecution. We'll do non-spoilers and then some spoilers. So I'll check back in with you guys once I'm done. Okay, so I am done with my rewatch, and I'm feeling better, so I'm out of bed, and I'm gonna paint my nails while I talk to you guys. So this was as great as I remembered, so that was nice. I remember, so when we watched And Then There Were None, this adaptation of it when it first came out, neither of my parents are big Christie fans. Like, I think they've, probably, I'm sure, seen adaptations over the years just because she is a ubiquitous cultural figure, but they weren't necessarily, specifically Agatha Christie fans. And I remember both of them really, really enjoying it, and it was as good as I remembered. So what I had kind of forgotten is that this version really puts Vera Claythorne front and center. Like, she really is kind of the star, which is true in the book. Like, Vera is definitely one of our central kind of like characters we have sympathy with, but it's more of an ensemble piece in the book. And in this adaptation, really, you get a lot of sympathy going early on for Vera, and she's definitely sort of filmed as the protagonist. The outfits were as amazing as I remember, the acting was as good as I remember, and I think that this is definitely the most faithful adaptation to the book of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None that we've gotten, because I've seen, I think, 2 other adaptations. One was quite old, like kind of golden age of Hollywood type thing. The other one I loved, which was from the 60s, which was very groovy. It's not that good of a movie, but it's really fun. And I think that the movie one was based off of the play adaptation of And Then There Were None, which I have never seen, but my understanding is it does have a different ending. So, I guess note that this was similar to Witness for the Prosecution, where if you have read and enjoyed the written story versus if you've originally encountered the story via the play, you may have different expectations as to kind of what the ending's like. So I actually really enjoy this, and how I think it really, so in the book, there are these extended scenes of people like having flashbacks, and I'll wait till we get to the spoiler section to get specific about that, but there's lots of kind of musing on the past and kind of all these characters being stuck in their own heads about what has happened to them in the past. And in the book, it's very effective. I mean, obviously it's like a masterpiece, it's very effective, but it does take those flashbacks kind of to another level, or like add kind of another layering to actually see the things that are being discussed as what, people are flashing back to. So actually seeing the scenes laid out for you, shot beautifully, lovingly, with like these freaking gorgeous costumes. Oh, I could not get over how great these costumes were. So I think that kind of just gives another deepening of the mood of the overall piece. So overall, I think Sarah Phelps' very sort of like cynical, dark take on Christie, And Then There Were None, is probably the best property she could adapt with that kind of perspective on the material. Like, it makes the most sense, I think. I'm trying to think if there's another I think if she did Endless Night, this would work really well for that. There's a couple of other ones I can think of where her take would be particularly suited, but sort of off the top of my head, I can think of very few besides And Then There Were None that are better suited to her sort of take on Christie's canon. Now, with that being said, before I get into spoilers, also, can we just have like a moment of silence and thanks for Aidan Turner in this movie? He's playing Lombard, and he is, they find, I think, an actually appropriate moment for him to be scantily clad, and I think we can all just say a prayer of thanks to the producers at the BBC for making that executive decision on behalf of all of us. So with that being said, let me get into some spoilers. Okay. So, by making Vera the main character in this particular one, the thing that really messes with your head on if you are not familiar with the source material, because this is my parents' sort of experience, I think, when they were first watching it, is that you kind of don't know, is Vera, is she wrongly accused? Was it just an accident with the little boy? You don't kind of know. I think in the book, it's a little clearer to the audience as you're reading that, she probably, that she did what she's being accused of. In the movie, it's sort of played a little bit more ambiguously, which I think was an interesting choice in terms of kind of playing with audience sympathy, because she's portrayed like the hero. And then by the end, you really find out, and like the way it's shot and how long she's lingering on the beach, you really, you know, it drives it home that like, no, like this was not an accident. She was like, little boy, you're getting between me and my man. You gots to go. So, you know, I think that that's a really smart play with the audience. I will say, I think that they went a little, so they really kind of amped up the gore on a lot of the backstories, because part of what I think works about the source material is that it's a lot of sort of deaths by opportunity and like by apathy or neglect. You know, a lot of just sort, you know, the dude who killed the kids with a card, that wasn't even on purpose. Couple who are serving the rest of them, like the servants. In the book, they just sort of like don't give this woman her medication, versus if I'm remembering rightly in this adaptation, they actually like suffocate her with a pillow. Like, it's pretty hardcore. So I just think that they kind of amped up the intensity, which again, that makes sense for Sarah Phelps and kind of her vision of it. But I do think that that was a little bit of a weaker choice, because I think part of what's cool about what the book is doing is that it's all of these murders that like can't be proven. I thought that was a different, but anyway, all that to say, while I didn't like that bit, I did particularly like the way they handled Vera's, because it's true to the book, and the way they played with the audience sympathy I thought was really great. I also like that they did stick to the original book's ending, because if I'm remembering rightly, in the play, Vera and Lombard are the two who survive, and they have like a romance together, which is definitely insinuated in the book, but like by the end, they're so in their heads, you know, Vera ends up killing him and she kills herself. You get that in the movie, which I was glad that they did. Something else they did that I didn't understand is that they basically have like a pause for a drug-fueled group party scene, and I don't know why. I think it's meant to be sort of like lascivious, like playing up sort of what a weird weekend it's turned into, which I guess, you know, I guess it's a way I see where it is in the text. Like, I think it's, you know, not out of nowhere, but I did think that was a weird choice, and I don't know that I love that. So yeah, anyway, but all that to say, I do love how faithful this particular adaptation is to the book, and I think if you're somebody who loves the book and wants to see what I think, I've only seen, this is the third adaptation I've seen. I'm sure that there's others out there, but of the three I've seen, it's definitely the most faithful, best production value, best acting, best costumes, all of that. Like, it's just top notch. So coming back from spoiler time, yeah, I think that those are my thoughts about And Then There Were None. It's really great if you love Christie, or if you just like a whodunit, even if you're not big on Christie, but you like I guess this isn't really a whodunit, it's more of sort of like existential thriller horror, but if you like that sort of in an old-timey setting with really just great production value all around, and you've not seen that particular adaptation, it is well worth seeking out, because it's very, very good. Okay, I've only gotten through one hand. Apparently talking while painting is not a strength of mine. I'm gonna do my other hand, but I will join back with you guys to kind of sum up how this project went very successfully. I have already seen 3 more episodes of Midsomer Murder. I'm obsessed. So anyway, we'll get back together and talk about that. So all around, that was an incredibly successful little watching experiment. I have to say, I was just delighted the entire time, because I really do love me some cozy mystery TV adaptations. Something I've realized in recent years is that I'm actually quite picky about how I like my cozy mysteries in book form. I think I am a little bit pickier about that, what I do and don't like. I think that sometimes when they're written, they can veer into sort of like a tweeness that I'm not always into, but when they're filmed, somehow that just like doesn't get to me in the same way. I think because the authorial voice isn't sort of like in my head, maybe getting a little too twee for me. So actually really, this was a good reminder to me of how much I really do enjoy this kind of content in TV form. So Witness for the Prosecution, I think we can safely say is my second favorite Agatha Christie, Sarah Phelps adaptation now. I think they did a really good job of highlighting the things about that story that I personally like. I know different people have different preferences, but for me, that really worked. Fantastic production value. Agatha Raisin, very cozy, very Gilmore Girls. I think I mentioned that when I was watching it, but that's really what this reminded me a lot of is if the Gilmore Girls was about Lorelai after Rory leaves the nest and she's also always solving murder mysteries, that's kind of the vibes it gave me, which I was into. I think that if you're into something that's very focused on sort of the small town feels, I think that this would be a show that you would enjoy. And especially then if you want like sort of the plot engine to be a mystery, I think this could be a real winner. Also, I'm sure I mentioned, but her hair is beyond fabulous. And then the, I think, true winner of this entire project has to be my discovery of how much I love Midsomer Mysteries. I have legit been watching it nonstop for the last few days. I've seen like, I think probably 7, 8, 9, 10 episodes, something like that. Now, I do want to say I clearly love this. It hooked me in the first episode when I knew something about Tis Pity She's a Whore and it helped me like guess where things were going. That was enough for me. But I love the vibes of the kind of mystery, and it feels very Christie-esque. It feels very Miss Marple, except from the point of view of like a male policeman. I just love it. I love it. I love it. I do want to give you a content warning that I have been watching the earlier seasons, which are in the 90s, like the mid to late 90s. They're very of its time in terms of some of the way that different topics are addressed. And particularly, I have not loved that there is a lot of references to LGBTQ characters. Like I literally have started making it a game of like how long it's going to take until like there's a reveal that someone is queer. Like I think on screen, the main character is supposed to be more progressive about that than his sergeant is. So I just want to make people aware that this definitely I think is showing its age in that particular respect. So a little bit of a content or just sort of like a heads up there. Besides that, I am thoroughly enjoying that show. Obsessed. And then I really did enjoy my rewatch of And Then There Were None. It's based on my 4th all-time favorite book. Of course, I'm gonna really love it. It's the best adaptation of that particular book, in my opinion. So it's just exciting and lovely to watch it again. So with that being said, really enjoyed this project. Looking forward to continuing, like I said, in particular, Midsomer Murders. Like I'm all in on that. That is gonna be my new show to binge. But all of this was wonderful. And I do think that it was very well timed in terms of slumpiness. I have been picking up some more books, so I think it has been facilitating me getting out of my slump, which is great. So hopefully that gives you all a sense of just some of the great options that Acorn TV has for those who are interested in world-class television from Britain and beyond. You can check out the affiliated link that I have listed in the description box below. And if you use the code BooksLikeWoe30, you can get a free trial for 30 days. So if you are interested in Acorn TV and you are interested in supporting me and the channel, definitely check out that link below and dive into some absolutely fantastic, cozy mystery content. So thank you once again for Acorn TV for sponsoring, but really collaborating with me on this idea. This was a really fun one for me to do. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and definitely let me know if you have seen any of the things that I talked about, or if you have other recommendations of things that people should try on Acorn TV. Definitely leave that in the comments as well below. So I think that will do it for me for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, follow me on the social medias if you are so inclined. I have all that information listed in the description box below. And I think that will do it. I hope you are having an absolutely lovely day today, and I will just talk to you soon. Bye!